Welcome back to Movie Recap. Today I'm gonna show you a 2014 British war docudrama film called Kilo 2 Bravo, also known as Kajaki. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie begins when Tug is floating and enjoys the refreshing water. Suddenly, an explosion near his head occurs, alarming him of the danger coming. Quickly swinging his hands to swim towards the land, he aggressively wears his sandals to approach the Afghan kid to confront him and his peers doing some dynamite fishing. Tug lashes out his anger at the dangerous stunt the child has done. Approaching the annoyed Tug, Mark and Jay approach him as they convince him to let go of the kids and beware of his actions. A British Chinook roams around the Kajaki Dam, in Helmand Province, Afghanistan, containing several soldiers inside. When the jet lands where the other British soldiers are currently in position, the soldiers inside quickly bring down their things to prepare as well. Pross, together with Jonesy, drives the military truck to deliver the package to their base. As they reach a checkpoint, John reminds them that they must be careful in taking the package to its proper destination. They see Tug, Mark, and Jay walking as they stride towards their base. Pross, being playful, offers them a ride, but quickly drives the vehicle before they can hop on. Arriving at the entrance of their barracks, they are welcomed by their comrades, Ken and Sergeant McMillan, as they unload the truck with the packages they brought for them. Mark introduced himself to the newly deployed Jones when he reached his place. The two exchange some short introductory messages before they shake their hands to seal their meetup. On the other hand, the soldiers rummage through their things before finally deciding to bring them to their pals, waiting at their posts. While carrying the packages on their quarters, Jay tours Jonesy in the place where they have set up their barracks, the medics, and theme store. Jay also informs him that they are about 16 in Athens. Tug is kneeling and is checking the butt-naked Jonesy's eggplant. Upon telling him what he sees, Tug stands up and stands to let him fix his pants. Jonesy then gets the canned beers in his duffel bag and shares his drink with Tug. Before he leaves, Tug prescribes him antibiotics and anti-inflammatory, and Jonesy escapes afterward. Hale uses his binoculars to spy and check the vicinity. Then, Private Smith orders Private Harvey to check the wind direction before he stands and leaves. The topless Snoop arrives. She witnesses his four comrades teasing each other while on a serious mission. Moments later, Pearson and Ken arrive, carrying their stocks and other goods. The radio dings as the person from the other side informs them of what is happening. The soldiers in charge of the patrol position themselves, and seek suspicious and unnecessary movements within the vicinity. When night came, Smith and his pal, Jarhead, used their binoculars to see the activities of the Taliban in the petrol station. Smith orders Jarhead to get and wake Stu Hale as there is an ongoing activity at the petrol station. Stu Hale immediately rises, and goes where Smith tracks down their enemies. Stu Hale borrows Smith's binoculars as he quickly checks the parameters and locates the Taliban group. Upon seeing them, he immediately grabs his radio to inform their comrades. Unfortunately, Stu Hale did not receive any response, so he picked up his gun to give an emergency shot signal that would alarm their group. McMillan opens his radio to contact Stu Hale back upon hearing the gunshot. McMillan asks Stu Hale about the emergency shot he fired a while ago. Stu Hale informs them about the Taliban activity at the petrol station. McMillan orders his comrade to go and wake up Mark, but upon the mention of his name, he arrives. Mark and his comrades use their radio to request immediate close air support near the petrol station. Seconds later, the person from the other side grants their request as they send the available one Dutch F-16. Preparing to launch an attack, Jay takes over in the post. The cannon bomb delivers an explosive in no time as Jay and his pals cover their heads upon firing it. Coordinating with their comrades, the 3rd Battalion watches Jay's attack as it nearly reaches its destination. Upon watching its explosion range, the soldiers discover that Jay's attempt is a failed one. The next day, Jonesy and Mark are having a conversation about the loss of Jonesy's buddy. Jonesy informs Mark about the happenings in his previous assignment. Their conversation continues till Mark suddenly asks Jones to stay quiet. A dog is approaching their location. When Jonesy sees the three-legged dog, Mark informs him that Afghanistan has been ruined since the army left it behind: roads, tanks, and mujahideen. Pearson spies the Taliban as he sees through his binoculars that there is a vehicle being stopped by the group. Stu Hale counts the number of victims exiting the car as there is an illegal checkpoint on the road. There is an extorting of money from civilians, which may explain the activity the night before. The two check the coordinates of the location to see if the sniping team may interfere in saving the civilians, but the possibility of taking action is quite impossible. Jarhead is sunbathing while he reads a magazine. The platoon from 3rd Battalion exercises together as they prepare for their upcoming expedition. Some are rotating and doing some routines, and some are merely playing. Tug and Jay are playing chess using the water bottles as their chess pieces on top of a chessboard. While Tug has become boastful of his Napoleonic tactics, Jay has already defeated him, checkmate in one move. Being defeated, Tug walks out as he goes back to his den. Jarhead, Stu Hale, and Faz prepare to leave, and check the vicinity where the Taliban steps their foot on. They plan to disarm and disperse the roadblock that the Taliban has made. Loading their bags with medkits and other essential things, the group decides to leave and explore. Meanwhile, Jay and the rest of the team are chilling out in their barracks. Upon reaching a particular destination, the group separately checks their surroundings. The three carefully step on the dangerous ground without assurance of a trap lying beneath the ground. When Pearson stops to contact his team, a massive explosion occurs when Stu Hale detonates a landmine. However, he loses his leg and a few of his fingers when it happens, which leaves him heavily wounded at once. Jarhead immediately runs through Stu Hale's direction to check on him, and asks him to calm down. But with the pain of losing his hand, Stu Hale is ballistic and panicky, shouting at Jarhead. When Stu Hale lifts his head, and scans his vision downwards, he sees half of his leg missing. Jarhead immediately performs a first aid response that may help Stu Hale from further bleeding. Stu Hale is shouting from agonizing pain as the bleeding continues to progress. Faz immediately approaches Jarhead and the struggling Stu Hale on the ground. Faz quickly removes his army bag to attend to his needs. Jarhead then calls on the radio to seek an emergency response in their destination as Stu Hale needs abrupt medical help. Jarhead orders Faz to go back, and call their comrades for backup, as he encourages Stu Hale to stay awake and fight back. When Pearson and the platoons hear the explosion, he calls Jarhead through the radion, but no one is responding. Deciding to check on Jarhead and Stu Hale, Pearson and two of his men prepare to leave. Mark is a mile away when he hears the mine strike explosion, and orders the rest of the 3rd Battalion to quickly look for their team as they equip themselves with essential tools to help them on their way to the mine strike. The available soldiers are gathered to run down the steep of the hill to offer help if there is an injured comrade. Despite the reeking danger, the soldiers did not back down in patrolling the steep hill. Pearson comes across the rushing Faz, who calls for backup, and the latter informs them of the situation from below. Upon hearing the information, Pearson yells to call the attention of their fellow soldiers. The group then travels their way to attend to Stu Hale's needs instantly. On the other hand, John, riding his car, arrives and stops the rushing soldiers as he invites them to ride the vehicle to attend the mine strike in Normandy. Upon reaching the steep hill, they witness how badly injured Stu Hale is. Smudge immediately transfers Stu Hale's wounded leg while Pearson entertains him to distract him from further pain. Jarhead informs Pearson that he has injected him with some morphine as he now asks him about his current feeling. Stu Hale cries his frustration, but Pearson encourages him that he will be fine, and will be rescued sooner or later. Jarhead makes fun of Stu Hale as he writes something on his face. Suddenly, Stu Hale calls for Smudger's attention to check on his little fellow lying between his legs. Smudger jokes that Stu Hale's eggplant is still attached to his body and remains small. Moments later, Jay arrives as he informs them that Mark and his team organized a rescue party that came down from Athens. Jay acts up as he puts another tourniquet on Stu Hale's leg. The latter screams out of pain. Arriving at the headquarters, John and two soldiers run towards the frustrated Ken, calling for a backup. Getting the communication device out of his hand, John and the soldier who accompanies him leaves Ken behind. Mark and Tug arrive with a stretcher, where they can transfer Stu Hale's body, and travel him back to a much safer area. Tug gives Stu Hale a pen of morphine once again as he orders them to mark it up. Mark orders Luke to join the foreman on Stag, Kenny will be in charge of securing the route, and Jonesy will be sent to Athens. The rest of the soldiers check the parameters as they leave markings on the ground that will help them identify the safe routes. When the team is in charge of attending to Stu Hale's needs, everyone carefully tries fixing Stu Hale's posture as they try to elevate his leg and give support to his spine. Surprisingly, Ken warns them as he locates something hard lying beneath the ground. Upon checking, he debunks his suspicion, and announces that it is just a rock. Hearing this news from Ken, everyone is relieved. Stu Hale then requests a stick of cigarette from Tug as the latter obliges. The rest of the patrol group clears the ground to provide a safe area where the helicopter can land. In this way, they can carry Stu Hale on a stretcher to the landing site that they have created. Helping each other to carry Stu Hale's body on the stretcher, in a count of 3, they have now transferred him to prepare for the incoming help from the arriving help from their comrades. After receiving a message on the radio, Mark finally orders his men to leave, and return to their quarters. Pearson turns back and walks along the cleared path. As he walks in the direction of his pals, another mine strike occurs. Pearson's both legs are wounded by the explosion as he painfully expresses the excruciating pain that he feels in his body. Pearson is just meters away from his comrades, but they cannot risk another explosion that may increase the casualties. As they cannot last in watching him suffer, Mark, together with 2 soldiers, immediately applies a tourniquet to Pearson's leg. The crushed bloody leg of Pearson is now being stopped from bleeding as it may cost it his life. He is also dosed with morphine while they patiently wait for the arrival of help from their quarters. Help finally arrives, but it is not the requested help they asked for. A Chinook is arriving and will be landing a few meters away from their location. Everyone signals that the Chinook must not land near their area. It lands 50 yards away from the ground, most likely covered with mines. When the person is waiting for them to enter, the Chinook sees the soldiers signaling something. The soldiers assisting their wounded siblings struggle to fight the solid dusty wind created by the Chinooks else. When the soldier notices that they are asked to leave, the Chinook takes off and leaves. The helicopter lifts off empty-handed because no one can take the risk of moving in its direction. However, its downdraft sets another mine as shrapnel's wounds Mark on his arm, face, and chest. Screams of agonizing pain from the soldiers are heard. Upon hearing their cries, Tug asks Prosser to report the situation. Mark has been wounded, and Stu Hale has been hit again. Tug and his comrades stop Ken from reaching the bag near him. They are afraid that he might set off another mine that will further endanger them and increase the casualty. Ken did not listen as he rushed to grab the bag and waited for an explosion, but nothing came. As Mark needs immediate attendance, Ken carefully finds his way in his direction. Mark screams to express his pain as Ken tries to stop the blood from coming out and tourniquet his arms and chest using the gun strap. As Tug can no longer watch Mark suffering, he decides to go to his place. Throwing the bag, then jumping on it has become his routine till he reaches his location. Mark stops Tug from doing it, but the latter never listens. The struggling soldier asks Jarhead to intubate him as he feels his right lung collapsing. Harvey explains that he might die if he will not receive the procedure. Harvey instructs Jarhead to stick the pen-like tool on his second rib, mid-clavicular. That's the soldier's request before anything terrible happens to him. Tug is halfway near Mark's location, as he is entirely nervous about his abrupt decision to risk his life to attend to him. Mark asks Ken for water, so they order the men who are in a safer place to throw some bottled water at them. Unfortunately, when Ken finally catches the last bottle, he steps on a mine, and a blast happens, making Ken lose his foot. When Tug rises, he quickly gives Ken some morphine, and stops his legs from bleeding. He tourniquets his leg to temporarily stop him from losing so much blood. Meanwhile, one of the soldiers collects their data as he asks every wounded soldier about their personal information. Stu Hale blames himself for the tragic situation their platoon currently experiences. His comrades encourage him that it will never be his fault, as everyone encourages him to cheer up. Stu Hale tells Smudge that if Shannon gets a boy, she must name him Alexander, and if it is a girl, she must name her Sophia. Stu Hale asks Smudge to do this for him if something worse may happen to him, dying. Smudge rejects Hale's request as he believes that he can still save him from his deathbed. Pearson sings unintelligibly. Ken complains about his pain, while Mark's lying on the ground. Tug reminds Ken that the more movement he does, the faster he will lose his blood. Tug informs Mark that he needs to check on his wound. Mark groans painfully from Tug's action. A few more hours had passed, but no help arrived. Instead of showing no hope in their current situation, the 3rd Battalion maximizes their time to talk about their lives, which may motivate them to continue striving to fight for their life. Teasing and random whatnots about their lie have been discussed. It kept them distracted. Mark feels thirsty once again, so he asks Tug to let him sip with a few drops of water. Moments later, Mark feels cold as he informs Tug about his last message to his family, dog, and fiancée. Tug never believes Mark, and asks him to hold on to his dear life, but Mark drops his final words continuously. Pearson interferes and tells him to still believe in being saved, but Mark never stops. The movie ends as there is an approaching chopper. The soldiers once again warn them of the minefield. They keep on signaling that they will be landing on dangerous land till the soldiers from the chopper drop themselves using a harness rope that may rescue them safely, and lift them one by one. The group prioritizes the heavily wounded, from Pearson to Stu Hale. Also, soldiers bring down a stretcher where they can transfer Mark instantly. His body and the rest of the soldiers are transferred to the Chinook. The medics can now properly cure their wounds. Sadly, Mark did not make it, and those injured struggled to survive. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this to help the channel out. Have a nice day.